After acquiring Jalen Brunson in the offseason, the New York Knicks have had a competitive season so far. They also increased their stash of first-round picks this offseason, which means they might be in the market for a star player should one become available. In our latest trade deadline preview, we're going to interview Alex Treteras of Knicks Fan TV. He gave some great insight into the team, and then at the end of this thing, we will have a couple of trade ideas. This is another in a long-running series of trade deadline previews for other teams, so if you want some insight on some other organizations as we head up until the trade deadline day, there is a playlist in the channel page. But before we get into the interview, let's look at some of the basics as far as the Knicks go. Right now, they have a 27-25 record. They are playing tonight, so that will change, but they've been hovering around 7th place in the East for the majority of the season. They've actually been a better offensive than defensive team so far this season, surprising given that Tom Thibodeau is their coach, but Jalen Brunson has had a huge part of that. He's allowed Julius Randle to be a little bit more of an off-ball player, more catch-and-shoot threes, rolls to the rim, dump-off passes in the paint, and Brunson is helping maximize Julius Randle right now. Randle got an all-star nod, Brunson got snubbed. I thought they both deserved it, but the acquisition of Brunson has been huge so far for the New York Knicks. On top of that, they don't necessarily have that third guy. Sometimes it's RJ Barrett, but he's been inconsistent this season, had a huge slump at the start of it, and the Knicks could be in the market for a true high-level upgrade. They can trade up to 8 future first-round picks. We'll take a look at those in a second, but I think the biggest area of need for the Knicks is offensive firepower in terms of shot creation. I think the Knicks' best chance at making a true run is to have an absolutely elite offense. While their offense is better than their defense, I would like to see them get another high-level shot creator. Their strengths and weaknesses match up together. They're strong in three-point defense, but weak in three-point offense. They're one of the best interior defenses in the league, but they don't finish well around the rim, and then they're a good offensive rebounding team, but struggle grabbing defensive boards. So another area of need potentially for the Knicks are two-way players that can knock down threes as well as defend the perimeter, or potentially a big man that can finish as well as protect the rim. The Knicks are currently $7.5 million below the luxury tax, so they don't have to worry too much about it. I think they're lucky to stay under the tax, but mostly because they have so much room to work with. Now let's take a look at their payroll. Brunson and Randle, being the Knicks stars, are making a combined $51.5 million. Evan Fournier is making $18 million. At this point, he is a negative contract. He'll make $18 million this year, almost $19 million the following year, but then the last year of his deal is a team option that will very likely get declined. Derrick Rose also has a team option on next year's salary, essentially making him an expiring contract, and also the most likely contract to get moved if the Knicks make a deal. Teams trading out high-quality players are usually looking for expirings in return to clean up their salary books, so Derrick Rose is an asset in that regard. Isaiah Hartenstein could be a salary filler in a trade at about $8 million. I talked to Alex in a bit about him, and Cam Reddish is a salary chip as well. We also talked about him. All in all, the Knicks should have no problem matching salary for a player. They should have no problem being able to stay out of the luxury tax, and pick-wise, they shouldn't have a problem either. The Knicks can trade up to 8 future first-round picks. They own 4 from other teams, and then they can trade 4 of their own while abiding by the Stepien rule. The worst of these picks might be the Pistons pick, as it's heavily protected for multiple years. The Milwaukee pick isn't super valuable either, as you would still expect the Bucks to be good in 2025. However, if they're not, it could end up being the most valuable pick of this bunch, as it's only protected 1 through 4. If it's top 4, the New Orleans Pelicans get it. That Washington pick is also unlikely to convey this year. I don't think the Wizards end up making the playoffs, and it is lottery protected, and the protections loosened by 2 picks per year over the next 3 seasons. The most valuable pick might be the Dallas Mavericks pick, as the West is super tight. The Mavericks could fall into the play-in, and it's only protected 1 through 10 for the next 3 years. This is a super deep draft, so that pick likely conveying this year probably makes it the best first-round pick that the Knicks have in order to make a deal happen. The Knicks are in a good spot pick-wise. Having first-round picks of different values makes it easier to give up proper value for players on the Knicks end, and when you look at all the second-round picks the Knicks also have, they are in prime position to make a splash. Anyway, with all that being said, let's talk to Alex from Knicks Fan TV. All right, what's going on, everyone? I'm with Alex Treteras of Knicks Fan TV. Alex, how's it going, man?
I'm good, Tori. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Glad to have you on to talk about the New York Knicks heading up to the trade deadline, because I think they're going to be a major player. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. You guys have had a pretty competitive season, 27-25, a couple games above 500, been a bit of an up and down year. What's your take on the Knicks season so far?
This is the play of a 500 team. As you mentioned, they've been competitive. Now it just comes down to, for the most part, late game execution, guarding the 3-point line. And those are really where the biggest flaws for the Knicks right now. 3-point line, we allow a lot of opposing teams just to put up a lot of shots. So far, they've been making them, or we just don't rotate fast enough. That's been one of our Achilles heels. And then it's just late game execution, whether it's on the defensive side or offensive side. If you watch the game last night where the Knicks were playing against the Lakers, you see that the Knicks have a chance to go to Brunson with the game on the line with 3 seconds left. Instead, we go to Julius Randle, and Randle doesn't drive all the way for a layup. He instead stops, does a turnaround jumper, gets double teamed in the end. And it's just stuff like that, man, where it's just so inconsistent with the late game execution that the Knicks are always in these games, but they just seem to fall apart at the real end. It's just a multitude of things. It's isolation basketball, not a lot of passing, not just like, and with that, when everyone's not getting involved, you just start to see stagnant offense. So it's a lot of things, a lot of things. But those I would say are the key three things right now for the Knicks. Like I would say they're not even like a really downfall, but for their struggles,
Yeah.
because if they just did tidy up some of those things, there's definitely a couple more games they could have had and be in the 30 game threshold right now for
Gotcha.
wins.
Gotcha. So with that being said, what do you think is the biggest need that they can address at this year's deadline? If you could trade for the ideal player, what would that player look like?
If we could trade for that ideal player, I mean, it's a wing. For a lot of the discussions right now, it's OG Anunoby. Yesterday, Ian Begley of SNY reported about Sadiq Bey. The Knicks have inquired about him. So you see that they know they need wing depth. RJ has really taken a step back defensively, even though his offensive game has now started to come around, and he's been pretty good for the last 15 games. Through the last 15 games, he's been averaging where is it? He's shooting 45% from the field, about 37% from three, 74% from the free throw line. He's getting 5 rebounds, averaging a little over 2 assists, right? And he's giving you, where is it, 21 points per game. So solid. It's solid from RJ, right? On the offensive side, but defensively, like we've seen guys like Jaylen Brown, when you watch the Celtics, just get an easy layup to finish. Yesterday, he got benched in the fourth quarter and didn't play a single minute in overtime because of his defensive woes. And if you just look at his plus minus according to NBA stats, NBA.com, and you go to their statistics website, he's a minus 5.7. But with a guy who's averaging over 20 points per game, it's a little shocking, right? So you see that, you're like, what's the thing? And it's really just been the defensive side of the ball. So if he can just tighten that thing up, you would say, okay, maybe the wing position doesn't need to be revamped that much, but because he is our sole wing player outside of Cam Reddish, who's not getting any playing
Hmm.
time, it's that's why that position needs whether it's more guys or an upgrade, whatever you want to consider it. But definitely need more guys because I like RJ Barrett. I think he could be a really good player. I'd like to see him improve his defense, but definitely have some pieces off the bench to help.
Yeah, so if the Knicks went out and got that wing, would you want to bring RJ Barrett off the bench in a sixth man role as just that scorer that doesn't have that pressure to step up defensively? Or would you still start him next to that wing?
I think what you would have to do in the discussion is that you paid him, right? So he has that new contract. And you'd think that he'd have to be a starter still. That's a lot of money for a guy coming off the bench. So you'd put Grimes off that bench role because he's just a second year player. Even though I do like Grimes in that starting rotation, he gives you something that a lot of the Knicks starters don't, which is a guy who's cutting, good 3-point shooting, uh, great perimeter defense. He gives you a little bit of versatility. He's 6'5", so he can guard some threes, not all threes, but we even seen him in matches where he's done an okay to decent job guarding someone like Pascal Siakam. Even last night, he went against LeBron James, and it was admirable. So I like him out there, but you'd probably put him on the bench, slide RJ up to the two. You kind of live with that, even though RJ doesn't have the foot speed to keep up with the quickness of some of those guards, right? Like a Bradley Beal. We even saw Trent Jr. on the Raptors give him some problems too with a setback and just his mobility. So I think you would still live with that because if someone's just going to attack and go past RJ, you have Mitchell Robinson as that safety valve in the defense. So you probably live with that. and he could be a mismatch advantage for the smaller shooting guards out there. So I think you would go with that if the Knicks did decide to go out and go get a wing.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. So, speaking of another wing that you already brought up, so Cam Reddish has fallen out of favor, and the Knicks gave up a first round pick for him only a year ago, and now it seems like they can't find anyone to trade him to. They're only looking for a second, is what I've heard. So, what went wrong there? What do you think the Knicks will be able to get back for
Whew,
him?
whew. What went wrong there? How long is this podcast and how?
You got all the time in the world, man.
All right. I think the first thing to start off with, right? And like we hear the first round pick and stuff like that. And it was a top protected pick. It was like 18th, 19th top protected pick. I think it was a top 18 protected pick. So the Knicks looked at that as kicking the can down the road. You wanted to get rid of Kevin Knox, who they knew they were not going to resign last season. And it made a lot of sense. You add wing depth. Thing was that Tom Thibodeau was not the guy, and it's been reported by Mark Berman, who's not on the beat anymore for the New York Post. He was not Tom Thibodeau was not thrilled at the idea of Cam Reddish coming on this team. So we saw a glimpse of it. He came here with an injury, had to heal up before he can get on the court. When he got on the court, he was getting minimal minutes, which is not uncommon for Tom Thibodeau, who doesn't like to play rookies who have to get adept to the play style, especially defensively. So we started to see him get more minutes towards the end of last season, but then he got injured. I believe it was against either the Clippers or the Suns, one of those games. And after that, he was gone. He was done for the remainder of the season. Coming into this season, because of being on the outside looking in, Grimes started off. I thought, and I think a good portion of the fan base thought that Reddish was a good get his chance. But with the Grimes injury to start the season, he had his chance. Showed that he could be solid on defense, but the offense was inconsistent. And it was against that Mavericks game where his defense was just, it wasn't great. And so from there, Tom Thibodeau pulled him. But I look at this whole situation as it goes both on the player and it goes both on the coach. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is forgiving enough for guys who have to go through struggles to show that they are valued on this team. I think he's a little too harsh, even with the Obi Toppin situation. Like I understand Julius Randle is having an all-star career again. He's playing great. But we see around the league that you can reduce a guy's minutes, keep them fresh for the remainder of the season, and have them ready for the playoffs, right? And so with that, that's where Obi Toppin comes in. But Obi Toppin is only averaging about 10 to 15 minutes a game. On a good night, we're seeing 15 minutes a game. And Obi has shown some flashes that he can produce. We saw last season he had a 40-plus point game. He can get you some solid rebounds and stuff like that. And I say all this to show you that Tibbs, after even seeing that sample size, still doesn't give Obi enough minutes and give Randall enough rest to give a young guy enough playing time. So I think Tom Thibodeau has this thing where he already didn't like him. He's not fitting into what he needs, especially as an all-around player. And any sign of just any mistake that Cam made, it was going to be tough because I think the predisposition for him was, I don't like this trade already. So if I see a clear out, there's that. Now I also think there's stuff off the court as well that led to that as well,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not privy to. So I think there is information on that. And then with Cam, I think he needs to go through the whole process of earning a coach's trust to get to that, believing he's a star player in this league, right? A lot of guys go through the whole grind, even in life, right? You got to work your way up to get to that ladder to show that you're deserving of that type of role and to get the green light. And I think he wants to get there without doing the actual work of in between to show that, hey, I'll work from being a bench piece. I'll show you that I can contribute in these ways. And let me show you that why I should be in the starting rotation. And then from there, you earn that trust to say, all right, you're that guy now. We're going to rely on you. I think that's another thing in Cam. And we've seen, we've seen the flashes. We know the talent's there. I have to think that there's a work ethic thing that comes with that as well for why Tibbs is not playing him, because you see that Quickley's done it, Grimes has done it. A lot of guys continue to do it, and even on other teams. So I think that's the other aspect. But the one that really sticks out to my mind is that, I don't know if you saw this, but for Cam Reddish, there was a video floating around where he was doing pickup basketball, and it looked like he was just going below half speed, man. And when I see stuff like that, and whoever greenlit for that video to be posted out there and doing like a pickup game, and you're going that slow and not being that intense. Like we'll see LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, all these guys are like at the Black Ops trading, right? In New York City going 110%, even with Russell Westbrook, right? Chris Brickley's Black Ops to be specific. And when I saw that from Cam, I'm like, you really want to post this to show what's going on? So I think it's like it's a multitude of things. It's not just the coach, it's not just Cam. I think all of that together, that's what happened in New York.
And I think that's a perfect situation to show why you need a GM and a head coach working together in as far as trades go. Because bringing in a guy like that who the coach supposedly isn't keen on can create problems, as we've seen with that. So it'll be interesting to see if the Knicks do acquire someone at the trade deadline. Is it somebody that Tom Thibodeau wants? Or is the GM and Thibodeau working together instead of potentially creating another Cam Reddish situation? Because that was the biggest thing that stood out to me when the Knicks traded for him was that I just saw the reports that Thibodeau didn't necessarily want him. So I don't know what that dynamic is there between the GM. I don't even know who the GM is, to be quite honest with you, but the GM and Tibbs, but that is definitely a dynamic that seems like it has to get fixed.
So the president of basketball operation, who everyone loves to reference, is Leon Rose. The GM is still Scott Perry. He was a holdover from the last regime when Steve Mills was the president. But Leon Rose, when he came in, Tom Thibodeau was his handpicked guy. He's represented him when Leon Rose was part of CAA. So there's that working relationship that everyone loves to joke on for the Knicks, where you have LeBron and Clutch. It's the New York Knicks and CAA. So that's the whole relationship tie with that. And look, I get it, and I totally agree with you. Where you would want your Pobo, your GM, the front office, and the head coach to be on the same page. And sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But in a situation like this, especially last year where you had a muddy situation with the Evan Fournier signing, Kemba Walker signing, the team just regressed. Randall regressed last season. Now he's back to playing like he did 2 years ago. Actually, even better in my opinion than he did 2 years ago. You see that, and you're just curious, why would you go get a player that the coach was not on the same page with? And now look at, it's not even just the basketball court issue, it's also the optics issue, right? The PR issue, because you want to know that when you have this young player who is trying to make it in this league, that he will get an opportunity for a team, especially last season, that was just falling off the rails every single game. It was the same recipe for disaster night in and night out. And it was like, all right, we'll get the 10, 20-point lead in the first half. We'll have the third quarter of doom. It's just a grinding halt from good ball movement that we saw in the first half. Third quarter, no ball movement. We're just going to rely on Randall to do everything. You lose the lead, and then the game is lost by the fourth quarter. And it was just the same recipe night in and night out. And you're like, well, this is a struggling team now. We obviously do not have the pieces to move forward. So why not just let our young players play, do some development, and gauge how valuable these players are, not only for this team, but around the league. And that's something where you would hope your coach and your front office are on the same mindset, that you understand that you just bring this young guy in, but they're not. And right from the get-go, if your head coach was not on the same page of bringing somebody in, you shouldn't force that. But now around the league, with that type of situation for a young player, right, gaining those minutes on a team that was struggling, was that safe for other opportunities towards other agents, other guys coming into the league? It's like, is my guy going to get that chance? Those are things that you got to think about now moving forward, if you're done just from an agent and player standpoint.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Our previous GM up here with my Portland Trailblazers always did favors for this one agent. I don't remember his name, but he was always signing the most obscure players from that agent, and it always seems like there's a couple agents that GMs scratch the backs of. So that's a great point. I want to revisit OG Anunoby because you brought him up, and the Knicks reportedly offered 3 first-round picks for him. How do you feel about giving up 3 first-round picks for him? Do you think that's an overpay? Do you think it's worth it for the Knicks? Do you think they should go out and overpay, even if they have to give up an extra asset or 2 just to get that guy they want? What are your thoughts on 3 firsts for OG?
I'd like to know what the first round picks are. What's the protections? Is it, is there a pick swap involved in that? I would like to know more details. But if you're telling me off the rip that we're giving an unprotected or two unprotecteds for OG Anunoby, I'm not all for it. I don't think he's that, like I said, I don't think he's that guy um, that's going to take you over the edge. I think he'll make you he'll solidify that you get into the top six. Like the Knicks right now, they're seventh right now in the Eastern Conference standings. In front of them is the Miami Heat. You got the Cleveland Cavaliers. You got the Sixers, the Nets, the Celtics. I see the Nets, the Celtics, the Nets, the Celtics, the Sixers, and who else? And the Bucks as like your lock at the four. I see that all the way. Now it's the Cavs and the Heat. I think the Cavs are going to be a top five team. I don't. You can't tell me that Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, and Evan Mobley don't take it to being a top six team. Miami Heat is now the team I'm looking at. So that's like the area that you're looking at right there. I think OG and Anunoby on the Knicks with what they have, there'll be a good battle. I think the Knicks could get that sixth spot. But other than that, are you going to go to toe to toe in a 7-game series with like, let's say if you get the six, you're going against the three. So who is that? Like Milwaukee, Philly? Like I don't see the Knicks necessarily going the distance and winning a series against one of those teams. They're just playing on another level right now. So the trade would be good for maybe like a future value if you're thinking about probably moving RJ Barrett. Check out last night's Knicks fan TV post game after the Knicks lost to the Lakers, and JD, one of the other co-hosts and myself, we discussed that situation, saying, well, if you're getting RJ, you think about OG. He's not like the fastest guy out there, very versatile defender. I like OG, but the fit is clunky. If you have him, RJ, Randall, Jalen, we're talking about a lot of guys, not a lot of foot speed. And then you add Mitch to that whole situation. And OG's like a good shooter. I like OG as a player, but you listen to that five, I'm like, all right, so we're really slowing this thing down. It's not guys flying out in transition, which you need in the NBA if you want to compete. So with that, it's a little muddy. 3 first-round picks, though, it's a little steep. If you told me it was like three of like top protected that aren't the Knicks own protect like picks, yeah, we'll have that conversation. But if you're telling me that unprotected's going in there, maybe the other two have to be highly protected. I'll say a maybe for that. But as soon as you're telling me more than one Knicks picks is going in there, like the team's own, right? Because we have the Mavericks pick, we got the Bucks pick, Wizards, and so forth. If you're telling me it's not the other two, those picks that are going in there with the Knicks, I'm out. I don't think he's going to do that. I'd rather the Knicks finish the season and then do their talent evaluation at the end and figure out what they need for the next season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because it's a buyer's market or it's a seller's market this year. Not a ton of players available and a lot of teams that want guys. So it'll be interesting to see what OG Anunoby ends up going for. I think it'll at least be 3 firsts. I even think a team might overpay and give New York a 4th if they can protect some of those. So that's always the question, though: are those picks unprotected? And yeah. So I want to ask you about Emmanuel Quickley. I've heard some rumblings around him. What do you think happens with him?
Hopefully he stays. I don't think he gets moved. If he does get moved, it's his off season. Hopefully he stays. He's been very vital to what the Knicks are doing right now and how they've been competitive. You see, like last night when RJ gets benched, it's Emmanuel Quickley that's in there. His defense has taken another level. His ability to attack the rim has taken another level from what we saw the last 2 seasons. He's now developing a mid-range jumper. He's slowly becoming a 3-level threat in the NBA. And because of that, I hope the Knicks don't trade him. I think he's going to be a vital piece for what they're trying to do moving forward. But at the same time, there's Jalen Brunson in front of him. You also have Quentin Grimes, who's been reported that Tom Thibodeau loves. So where's the other opportunity for Emmanuel Quickley to break into the starting rotation? Like, he's getting solid minutes. Don't get me wrong. 28, 30 minutes, depending on the night. But if you're not going to be able to carve out a starting role for him and stuff like that, I wonder if the Knicks are able to hold on to him long term. They will have their restricted, he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of the next season. But what team decides to say that's a vital piece that we can use moving forward? What if we overpay, right? This is where, trading for OG Anunoby, how do you figure out this team moving forward and make all these different moves? So it's very complicated, but I really hope that they keep Emmanuel Quickley.
And then final question, are there any other names you think the Knicks should go after that we haven't talked about?
I did you joined me on one of the game of the week previews for
Mm-hmm.
Knicks Fan TV where we broke down the Knicks versus the Portland Trailblazers. I did one with Mark Schindler, who covers the NBA, WNBA. He's a podcaster for Indie Cornrows, part of the SB Nation. And another one is Pacers think, um, they need a four and we need another wing. And they got Chris Duarte, who's been demoted from being in the starting rotation to the bench. You got Benedict Mathen over there. You got Buddy Hield, and he's talked about how key those guys are. And then you have Andrew Nebhard, who's made an impressive NBA, who's made an impressive mark, I should say, this year in the NBA. And with that, what does that mean for Duarte? And now conversely, look at the Knicks, right? Obi Toppin just talked about it. 10 minutes, eighth round pick. He's a lottery pick. It's behind Julius Randle. Randle has an extension. This team seems to be in on Randle. So if that's the case, I would say I would look out for something like that where the Knicks trade it. I would hate it just because being a Knicks fan and the history with the Indiana Pacers, but it just makes too much sense where both teams have something that each other needs right now. Pacers need a four because they have either Jalen Smith or Aaron Naismith playing the four, with Miles Turner playing the five. And for the Knicks, we need another wing. You know what I mean? So I would look at something like that. That's something that's on the table. I mentioned Sadiq Bey earlier. I would look at something like that. That's another trade I would expect Obi Toppin to be in for Sadiq Bey. Um, so those are like the two other trades that I would say be on the lookout for. And the Knicks have done a lot of deals with the Pistons so far. We traded Burks, Nerlens Noel. They took Kemba Walker from us. We also got Derrick Rose 3 seasons ago, whatever it may be. So I would look out for that as well.
Yeah, and as a Blazer fan, I've been messing around with a lot of trades where I got Josh Hart going to the Knicks, just as
Ooh,
that wing off the bench that can do a bunch of things and rebound the ball well. A lot of it, 3-team deals and whatnot, because I'm a Hartenstein fan, so if you
mm.
guys want to get rid of him, I would take him as our backup center. I'm not the biggest Drew Eubanks fan, so I've always wanted Hartenstein in Portland. But it would be interesting to see what Josh Hart goes for because he's supposedly available as well. And with all those first round picks you guys got, I'd definitely be eyeing one as a Blazer fan if that was possible for Josh Hart.
Yeah, I mean Josh Hart. I mean Josh Hart. I like Josh Hart. I like how he plays the game, especially when you think about another Villanova product. Plays defense. It just seems like a Tibbs guy.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to get out in transition too. And when you think about Hartenstein, who it's been difficult for him to adjust to a Tom Thibodeau system, considering he's more of an offensive big than defensive guy. He's not a rim protector like Jericho Sims or Mitchell Robinson, who's really been an anchor for our defense. It makes sense to trade Hartenstein because he wasn't fitting in. But the last 4 games, he's been playing well, man. He's averaging 74% from the field. He's been getting us a little over 8 rebounds. We're now starting to see the passing again. He's up to 2.5 assists, especially making a mark on the offensive glass with 3 rebounds as well. Want to note that as well. So you look at that over the last 4 games, you start seeing him coming into his own and doing stuff like that. I think it's a little bit tougher at this point with Mitch being out to around All-Star break, maybe the week afterwards. I'd still think the Knicks want some center depth, considering that the center market is not that great. I mean, names that are flying out around there is Naz Reid, who's a solid backup. I think he wants to get paid. So I'm not really sure how that fits here, especially when you have Jericho Sims you got to think about. Andre Drummond on the whole Chicago Bulls situation. Not sure where that's going to go. Vucevic, just stay away from it, even though he's in the last year of his deal, and they're trying to figure out what they're doing over there, whether or not the Bulls are going to tear it all down or run it back again. And then who else you got? There's been a couple of guys on the market that just you'd be like, maybe makes sense, maybe not. I don't see Hartenstein getting moved though. So as much as I would have done that weeks ago, I would be like, yo, you called me up weeks ago? Absolutely. Get Jericho Sims more minutes. Mitch is killing it. I'd do that in a heartbeat. But right now, I don't see that happening. Jakob Pertl is another name, and Mo Bamba too. Those are other
Mm-hmm.
names that have been around the market. I don't see the Knicks making a move for Pertl just because he's a starter. Mo Bamba, I don't see that either.
Yeah, yeah. Hartenstein's playing like how I expected him to play recently, so I think, teams, if they wanted to miss the boat on that. Anyway, thank you for coming on, Alex. Feel free to plug whatever you want to plug.
Oh my God, Tori, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Always fun talking to you about the NBA and just basketball in general. You can find my work over at KnicksFanTV.com and the YouTube channel. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm also the senior editor over there. So you can find my work at KnicksFanTV.com, and you can find a bunch of other great writers over there publishing articles. And then just check out Knicks Fan TV YouTube. You can go over there, or I should say, go to youtube.com/KnicksFanTV. You can go find the channel over there. We got all the post-game action. We got weekly where we recap the week that was. We do game of the week previews. We choose like a specific game of that week that we want to just break down. We got a lot of stuff going on over there. Channel's continuously growing, so make sure to go support and hit that thumbs up button for your boys over there, as we always say.
Yeah, thanks, man. Good to talk to you. Good luck with the Knicks.
Appreciate it. You too.
Anyway, thank you to Alex for joining us. Now let's look at a couple trade ideas. I think the Knicks are truly in a prime position for an OG Anunoby trade, with all those extra firsts as well as Derrick Rose's expiring contract being able to match OG Anunoby. The Knicks, I think, might be the front runner for him. Anunoby wants a bigger role than he has in Toronto. I'm not sure the Knicks can promise that, but for their average ranked defense, OG Anunoby would be a huge help. Alex said he'd move RJ Barrett to the starting shooting guard position, but OG Anunoby is good guarding guards. You could hide RJ Barrett on the weakest wing, and you could put OG Anunoby on the best one. It would give the Knicks more defensive versatility in how they match up, and having a guy that you can put on a Kevin Durant, put on a Giannis Antetokounmpo would be a huge help for the Knicks trying to make a playoff run. However, if the Knicks can't get OG Anunoby, their options are far less flashy, but there are still some guys that can help. As I talked about in the interview, Josh Hart is available from the Portland Trail Blazers, and Shams earlier today reported that the Trail Blazers are zeroing in on Jared Vanderbilt, so this next trade is a 3-team trade. This is my best shot at trying to purely guess a trade, but in their pursuit of Vanderbilt, the Blazers will likely be looking for a first-round pick from a third team, and with all the Knicks picks, if they don't land OG Anunoby, I could see them going after Josh Hart to be that well-rounded Swiss Army knife off the bench that could help them with their defensive rebounding issues. Justice Winslow is some filler salary here, but he could play some spot minutes for the Knicks as a forward that can play some defense as well as pass the ball, handle it a little bit, and the Knicks in this trade give up Derrick Rose as well as a first-round pick. I could throw a couple more trade ideas in here, but I want your thoughts. I want your trade ideas down in that comment section below. What do you think the New York Knicks will do at this year's trade deadline? If you're a Knicks fan, what do you want them to do? Looking forward to reading your thoughts. Make sure you subscribe to NBA Uprise. We're on the road to 1,000 subs. And like this video, as it truly does help out the channel. And with that being said, I am out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out.